The origins of the Collegia Titanica trace back to the earliest years of human stellar expansion during the Dark Age of technology. This era, also called the Age of Technology, began in the 21st millennium and marked humanity's transition into a spacefaring civilization. During this time, science and technology reached heights never again replicated. Entire sectors were brought under human control, and new branches of knowledge were developed to assist with colonization, terraforming, and galactic-scale logistics. Among the most significant advancements of the period were the Titans, towering war engines constructed for defense, territorial enforcement, and planetary-scale warfare. The Titans themselves were not originally designed for combat. Some early models were utilized for industrial purposes, including heavy mining, excavation, and city construction. These machines eventually evolved into strategic military platforms as human colonies became vulnerable to both internal rebellion and external threats, including xenos incursions and rogue artificial intelligences. Titans proved effective in situations where conventional infantry, armor, and even aerospace forces failed to secure objectives. Their development and deployment required a dedicated infrastructure, leading to the establishment of what would become the Collegia Titanica. The Collegia Titanica was founded as a centralized body tasked with the development, maintenance, and command of all Titan legions. It was not an isolated organization. Rather, it functioned under the wider umbrella of the Mechanicum, the Martian cult of technology that rose to prominence during this period. The Mechanicum, based on Mars, had evolved into a powerful technocratic order that fused religious reverence with scientific mastery. Its priests, tech priests and magos, believed in the Omnissiah, the machine god, and viewed all knowledge as sacred. Within this context, the Titans were not simply weapons. They were living avatars of divine power, worthy of worship, strict hierarchy, and relentless discipline. The Collegia Titanica formed multiple legions of Titans, each known as a Titan Legion. These legions operated independently but shared common doctrine, rituals, and architectural traditions. Each legion was based around a central forge world or forge city, which supplied manpower, maintenance facilities, and technological support. Titans required constant repair, calibration, and machine spirit appeasement. Even the smallest Titan demanded hundreds of support personnel, including engine seers, tech acolytes, and labor servitors. The internal structure of the Collegia Titanica was rigid and stratified. Each Titan Legion was commanded by a Princeps Senioris, the highest-ranking operational officer who had undergone a lifetime of training and cybernetic integration. Below the Princeps were Moderati, who served as sub-commanders within each Titan, managing systems such as void shields, plasma reactors, and primary weapons. Tech priests maintained engine sanctity, while Secutari regiments, elite infantry augmented by cybernetic enhancements, protected Titans in close combat and secured perimeters during deployment. The Titans themselves were monumental in both scale and power. The smallest class, known as the Warhound Scout Titan, stood around 15 meters tall and operated with speed and agility. It functioned as a reconnaissance or flanking unit. The larger Reaver-class Titans reached nearly 25 meters, acting as multi-purpose assault platforms. The mighty Warlord-class Titans rose to over 32 meters and were capable of leveling cities. The largest ever constructed were the Imperator and Warmaster-class Titans, vast mobile fortresses towering over 50 meters in height, able to destroy entire divisions with a single barrage. The biological interface required to control a Titan was severe. Princeps were chosen from childhood and underwent years of neural training, sensory expansion, and surgical modification. Their minds were gradually fused with the Titan's machine spirit through a process called the manifold interface, allowing them to perceive the Titan as an extension of their own body. In combat, this symbiosis enabled instant reaction times and intuitive battlefield awareness, but it also imposed lasting psychological consequences. Many Princeps experienced disassociation, emotional numbness, or permanent neurological degradation after years of service. Recruitment into the Collegia Titanica was highly selective. individuals were chosen from Mechanicum families, Forge world populations, or worlds under close Mechanicum oversight. Prospective crew members underwent a process called mechanized aptitude screening, a series of cognitive, spiritual, and physiological tests designed to measure compatibility with Titan systems. Candidates who passed the initial trials were inducted into training centers called cognitor domes, where they were conditioned in everything from engine rituals to machine-spirit communication. This early indoctrination reinforced obedience to the Omnissiah and ensured a shared doctrinal foundation across all Titan crews. Each Titan had its own machine spirit, a partially sentient code form that required ritual appeasement and spiritual maintenance. These spirits could become unstable or rebellious if mishandled. To prevent such occurrences, the Collegia relied on ritual litanies of awakening, a series of techno-prayers, incantations, and system initiations led by tech priests before any Titan could be activated. It was believed that each Titan held a fragment of the machine god's divine purpose, and thus its machine spirit was to be revered, not merely controlled. The appearance of Titan crews reflected their deeply religious and militarized culture. Princeps were often lean, pale, and cybernetically enhanced with cranial ports, neural spines, and optic augmentations. Moderati, though less integrated, shared similar modifications and bore ritual scarring or sacred tattoos. Tech priests and engine seers wore red robes, rebreathers, and servo-arm arrays, marking their devotion to the Martian creed. Even the Sectarii bore mechanical limbs and skull-faced helms, embodying the intersection of faith and warfare that defined the Collegia Titanica. Socially, members of the Collegia were isolated from standard Imperial society. Their loyalty was directed toward the Forge worlds, the Omnissiah, and their individual Titan Legion. Within their own ranks, they followed a strict caste system based on function, rank, and seniority. New initiates served as acolytes and apprentice maintainers before rising through the ranks to become Moderati or Tech Adepts. The Collegia promoted based on both service length and spiritual merit, with emphasis placed on the ability to commune with machine spirits and adhere to ancient rites. Despite their reliance on advanced technology, the Collegia was resistant to innovation. In accordance with the Mechanicum's beliefs, all knowledge was sacred and unchangeable. Titans were constructed from blueprints known as Standard Template Constructs, or STCs, dating back to the Dark Age. These patterns were followed with extreme fidelity. Deviations were seen as heretical and potentially catastrophic. When a Titan was damaged beyond repair, every effort was made to recover its reactor core and its machine spirit essence for transfer into a new shell. Nothing was discarded. Every component was seen as a relic. The logistical requirements of a Titan Legion were immense. Moving a single Titan required massive transport craft, heavy crawler convoys, and orbital drop equipment. Titans were rarely deployed alone. Instead, they moved in maniples, standard formations consisting of several Titans with complementary roles. A Venator maniple, for instance, might include 2 Warhounds for flanking and a single Reaver for fire support. A Myrmidon maniple might consist of Warlord-class Titans acting in unison for city-level assaults. Each formation was supported by a full retinue of Secutarii, maintenance convoys, fuel reserves, and mobile sanctuaries for tech priests. Some Titan legions specialized in siege warfare, while others operated in void conditions or dense urban terrain. The Legio Tempestus, known as the Stormlords, excelled in atmospheric assaults and rapid deployment. Legio Metallica, the Iron Skulls, were brutal shock assault units focused on breaking stalemates. Legio Mortis, the Deathheads, became infamous for their unrelenting pursuit of enemy strongholds, often leaving nothing but ash in their wake. Each legion had its own heraldry, colours, and sacred war oaths passed down over generations. The ethics of the Collegia Titanica were shaped by both Mechanicum dogma and battlefield pragmatism. Titans were tools of overwhelming force, designed to obliterate opposition through sheer dominance. However, their use was tightly regulated. Titans were never to be deployed against fellow Mechanicum worlds or used in personal feuds between Forge Lords. Doing so violated sacred compacts and invited censure from the wider Martian hierarchy. Internal divisions were rare but not unknown. During the Horus Heresy, some Titan legions turned against the Imperium, fracturing the Collegia into loyalist and traitor factions that still operate today. Those who remained loyal continued to serve the Imperium under the control of the Adeptus Mechanicus, the post-heresy evolution of the Mechanicum. The Collegia Titanica now functions as a semi-autonomous entity within the Mechanicus, maintaining its sacred rites, operational doctrines, and centuries of accumulated battlefield wisdom. While their numbers have dwindled since the glory days of the Dark Age, the Collegia remains one of the most powerful and respected institutions in the Imperium of Man. In the field, a Titan Legion's arrival often marks a shift in strategic momentum. Their presence alone is enough to shake enemy morale, and their firepower can dictate the outcome of planetary campaigns. To Imperial citizens, they are towering saints of steel. To their enemies, they are death incarnate. But to the Collegia Titanica, they are family, sacred engines of war bound by code and spirit, and watched over by those who have sacrificed their humanity to keep them walking. The rituals of the Collegia Titanica form the core of their daily life, battlefield operations, and internal cohesion. Unlike standard Imperial Guard regiments or Space Marine chapters, the Collegia is governed not only by martial discipline, but also by techno-religious orthodoxy. Every action taken by a Titan crew is accompanied by ritual, whether it is a daily engine blessing, the recitation of the Canticle of Ignition, or the ceremonial calibration of targeting arrays. These rites serve dual functions: mechanical necessity and spiritual reinforcement. Even a minor systems check becomes a liturgical moment designed to honour the machine god and re-establish the link between operator and engine. Before a Titan is activated for battle, a full litany of activation must be performed. This multi-stage ritual involves data saints, binary cantors, tech priests, and the entire crew assembled in ceremonial alignment. The sequence begins with offerings of sacred oils and unguents applied to the Titan's core machine-spirit interface. The engineers then perform a coordinated diagnostic cycle called the Pulse of the Omnissiah, during which each subsystem, plasma vents, reactor nodes, void shield matrices, is inspected, cleansed, and reaffirmed through rite and incantation. Once the Titan's systems respond in harmony, the final activation code is input not as a command, but as a prayer. Only then will the Titan rise. These ceremonies are more than affectations. The ancient systems integrated into most Titans are so complex, so layered with forgotten subroutines and forbidden code, that they will not operate properly unless engaged through prescribed rituals. Over the millennia, Titans have developed semi-sentient personalities shaped by experience, trauma, and prior users. Some refuse to function for any crew other than their bonded princeps. Others will reject commands unless their unique litanies are performed in the correct dialect or pitch. The Collegia's vast archive of machine rites includes countless variations tailored to specific Titans, some of which are older than many Forge Worlds themselves. Within the Collegia Titanica, internal divisions exist along both functional and philosophical lines. While all Titan legions fall under the broader command of the Adeptus Mechanicus, each one maintains a unique identity built from heritage, Forge World origin, and battlefield legacy. These identities are enforced through visual distinction, sacred oaths, and isolated doctrine. For example, Legio Astorum, the Warp Runners, are known for their preference for high-speed engagements and warp-jump-capable Titans. Legio Gryphonicus, the War Griffins, employ precision bombardment and tend to emphasize honor dueling between Titans of equal class. By contrast, Legio Vulpa, aligned with chaos during the Horus Heresy, embrace berserker tactics and corrupted machine spirits. Legions that remained loyal to the Emperor continue to maintain strong ties to the Fabricator General of Mars and operate with relative autonomy. Their movements and deployments are coordinated with the Adeptus Mechanicus and, when necessary, the High Lords of Terror. However, Titan legions are never subordinated to non-Mechanicus command. Not even the Inquisition or the Adeptus Astartes can directly command a Titan legion. Instead, negotiations must occur at the highest levels of Imperial diplomacy. In battlefield operations, a Titan legion may work alongside Guard or Astartes forces, but it will always maintain its own chain of command, its own war plan, and its own logistical footprint. The size of a standard Titan legion varies depending on its history and resource access. A well-established legion based on a major forge world like Mars, Lucius, or Metallica may field dozens of Titans across various classes. Smaller legions, particularly those operating in isolation or still rebuilding after the heresy, may consist of only a few maniples. It is important to note that Titan legions are not replenished easily. Each new Titan requires centuries to manufacture, sanctify, and fully integrate into a legion's war doctrine. Many legions continue to field Titans that are over 10,000 years old. These engines are treated with reverence equal to Imperial saints, and are given personal shrine crypts when not in battle. Each Titan receives a unique name upon construction, typically bestowed by the presiding Archimagos Domina or Fabricator General of the Forge World. Names often reflect battlefield roles, historical events, or theological motifs. Examples include Invictus Vult, Dies Irae, Benedictus Aeternum, and Wrath of Mars. These names are painted in high Gothic along the Titan's carapace and reinforced through chant and invocation during deployment. Some Titans even develop reputations that transcend the Legion itself, becoming the subject of Mechanicus folklore or targeted by Chaos warbands hoping to corrupt or destroy them. Behaviourally, the Collegia is marked by a blend of stoicism and intensity. On the surface, its members exhibit the calm, calculated demeanour of the Mechanicus, logic-driven, emotionless, and reserved. However, once inside the Titan, many crew members report experiencing intense psychological immersion, euphoria, or even addiction to the sensation of piloting a god machine. The Princeps, who is neurologically merged with the Titan, often describes the bond as overwhelming. While their body remains in the command cradle, their mind experiences the world from a towering perspective, feeling the ground quake, the wind ripple across the hull, and the scream of plasma as if it were breath itself. Some never recover fully after disconnection. Others die during the fusion process due to neural collapse or spiritual rejection by the machine spirit. This behavioural change has prompted the Collegia to implement strict post-mission debriefing and spiritual cleansing protocols. After every engagement, a Princeps must undergo a rite of severance, where the machine spirit is ritually thanked and dismissed, and the human mind is gently reoriented to its organic state. This rite is conducted in private, often with the assistance of a Medici priest and a cantor of harmony. Even the most seasoned crews treat this ritual with caution, as prolonged fusion without proper detachment has been known to cause permanent hallucinations, psychic bleed, or mind loss into the noosphere. The Collegia Titanica does not operate in isolation from its environment. Its forge worlds are sprawling techno-industrial planets, characterized by towering manufactoria, atmospheric pollution, and sprawling machine cities. These worlds are not built for civilian comfort. Instead, they exist to serve the Mechanicus' need for raw material processing, sacred experimentation, and war engine production. Forge worlds like Mars, Esteban III, and Lucius are heavily fortified, guarded by Scytteriae legions and orbital defense grids. The atmosphere is often thick with metallic dust. Sound carries oddly through the machine tunnels, and the air tastes of ozone, rust, and sacred oils. Light comes from plasma conduits, arc lamps, and the occasional burning shrine. These environmental conditions reinforce the Collegia's isolation and theological discipline. Titan maintenance hangars, called manticores, are vast cathedral-like structures. Inside, tech priests and labour servitors work continuously to repair, calibrate, and anoint the sacred systems of resting Titans. Each hangar has dedicated sub-chapels for rituals, data crypts for records, and assembly lines for spare parts sanctification. These locations are forbidden to outsiders and are heavily guarded by secutari squads. To defile or infiltrate a Titan hangar is considered a high blasphemy punishable by incineration or soul severance via machine excommunication. Titan combat deployments follow carefully scripted protocols. Upon assignment to a war zone, a Titan Legion dispatches a reconnaissance mechanum to study terrain, atmospheric conditions, and potential xenos or heretic opposition. The Titans are then transported via mass conveyor platforms, gravity cranes, or dropships depending on planetary orbit. Once deployed, each maniple forms a battlefield phalanx optimized for visibility, fire coverage, and mutual defense. Flanking Titans use terrain elevation to cover blind spots, while Warlord-class Titans form the core line. Deployment is never spontaneous. Every step is planned, simulated, and ritually blessed days in advance. In active warfare, Titans serve as strategic centerpieces. Their firepower includes plasma annihilators, volcano cannons, Gatling blasters, and Quake missiles. These weapons are not used for precise engagement. Instead, they clear entire zones, annihilate fortifications, or vaporize incoming armored columns. Some classes, like the Warhound Titan, use megabolters and turbo lasers for rapid strikes, while the Imperator class may carry entire macro-cathedrals on their back, launching artillery barrages from mobile sanctums. Every weapon system is manually overseen by the Moderati, who operate via data tethers and voice-lock command codes, ensuring full control at all times. Kill counts are not maintained for glory, but as statistical devotion. After each battle, crew members record every shot fired, every system activated, and every confirmed destruction in a sacred log called the Red Lament. This log is sealed within a data casket and submitted to the Forge World's archive vault, where it is encrypted and reviewed by Lex Mechanicus. Titans that reach certain thresholds, such as 1,000 confirmed kills or survival of a multi-front engagement, are awarded sacred designations and may receive upgrades, armor reanointment, or additional machine spirit augmentation. Over time, Titans become repositories of layered history. Paint chips show where xenos acids once splashed across their hull. Dents carry the memory of traitor shells. Interior decks smell of incense, ozone, and old machine oil. Even the crew quarters, though functional and sparse, are filled with small tokens of reverence. Servo skulls, purity seals, fiber scrolls bearing binaric code prayers. In this way, the Collegia Titanica does not merely field Titans, it carries temples to war into the battlefield, moving sanctuaries of fire, steel, and devotion. The identity of the Collegia Titanica is one forged in millennia of uninterrupted war, religious tradition, and absolute specialization. Unlike the Adeptus Astartes, who may act as crusaders, governors, or political agents depending on their chapter culture, the Titan legions serve a singular, immutable role. They exist to walk where no others can, to break enemy lines that cannot be broken, and to speak in the language of city-leveling weaponry. Their sole function is to deliver overwhelming force with divine precision, and this specialization has deeply shaped the psyche of those within the Collegia. Members are not merely trained to serve the Titans, they are raised in their shadow, indoctrinated from birth to revere them, and often die inside them. This indoctrination begins in the earliest levels of Mechanicum-controlled society. Children who exhibit early signs of cognitive aptitude, neural discipline, or latent synesthetic tendencies are marked for potential service within the Collegia. These children are brought to training monasteries where they live under austere conditions, exposed constantly to the sensory stimuli of active Titans, thunderous vox relays, searing plasma discharge simulations, and rapid response drills within mock command cradles. This environment cultivates both reverence and psychological adaptation. Those who fail to acclimate are redirected to auxiliary roles, or removed from the program entirely. Those who remain begin a long transformation into Titan operatives. Within this culture, behavioral conditioning is enforced not through fear or punishment, but through sacred obligation. It is taught that the Titans are not merely machines, but co-pilots on the path to divine understanding. To falter during maintenance, to question a machine spirit's will, or to delay a litany is not considered tactical failure, it is spiritual blasphemy. Moderati are trained to recite holy binary verses before activating subroutines. Engineers must undergo rites of silence before repairing plasma coils. Even simple actions like adjusting the heat intake of a reactor conduit must be preceded by chant or sanctioned blessing. These requirements form the invisible lattice of Collegia discipline, ensuring that every movement, thought and decision is tethered to ritual and purpose. Among the most sacred rituals is the rite of rebirth, performed when a Titan has been critically damaged, but its core reactor and machine spirit are successfully recovered. In such cases, the engine's remains are brought back to its home forge world, and a months-long ceremony begins to transfer its spirit into a new warframe. This ritual is performed by the highest-ranking tech priests available, and includes thousands of data psalms, interface blessings, and nospheric linkages to encourage the spirit's acceptance of its new body. The princeps bonded to the original Titan is often involved in this process, acting as a bridge between the old form and the new. If the spirit rejects its rebirth, the Titan is declared dormant sanctum, sealed, and enshrined indefinitely within a hangar cathedral. The ethical outlook of the Collegia Titanica is governed by Mechanicum logic, not imperial dogma. Unlike the ecclesiarchy, which views the emperor as a god in human form, the Collegia follows the Omniscient Creed, a faith that recognizes the emperor as the physical avatar of the machine god, but not its sole expression. This divergence in theological structure sometimes places the Collegia at odds with other imperial institutions, especially the more zealous branches of the ecclesiarchy. However, due to the strategic importance of Titans, these tensions are tolerated rather than inflamed. The High Lords of Terror understand that the Collegia cannot be replaced, duplicated or forced into compliance through brute means. Titans do not bend. The practical result of this religious distinction is that Collegia personnel place greater value on functional outcomes than on symbolic gestures. While the Adeptus Sororitas may refuse to fire upon a heretic stronghold if innocents are present, a Titan crew will simply calculate the blast radius, weigh the tactical cost of delay, and proceed with minimal hesitation. They do not disregard civilian casualties, but they interpret collateral damage through the lens of battlefield mathematics. To them, strategic paralysis is a greater sin than the death of non-combatants. This ruthless logic makes them effective, but also feared by other Imperial forces, particularly those unfamiliar with Mechanicum protocol. Among the many Titan legions, some have earned legendary reputations for their distinctive combat styles, histories, and battlefield influence. Legio Mortis, the Death's Heads, was among the earliest and most feared Titan legions, founded during the Dark Age of Technology and later corrupted by chaos during the Horus Heresy. They became infamous for their grim heraldry, unrelenting tactics, and widespread destruction. They fielded warlord titans in densely packed formations, and were often deployed in prolonged siege campaigns, systematically obliterating enemy infrastructure. By contrast, Legio Astorum, the Warp Runners, specialized in rapid deployment and warp insertion tactics. Operating with high mobility and surgical precision, their Warhound and Reaver-class Titans often engaged in coordinated ambushes, arriving via teleportation arrays or atmospheric insertion to outmaneuver larger formations. Their Princeps were trained in accelerated command response and cognitive burst strategy, making them particularly effective in unpredictable war zones. Legio Griffonicus, the War Griffins, maintained a strong sense of battlefield honor and tactical discipline. Known for their symmetrical battle formations and ritualized declaration of engagements, they embodied the traditionalist school of Titan warfare. Their Titans were painted in regal white and gold, and their banners displayed each confirmed victory in stitched binary. Griffonicus war engines were often found at the vanguard of Imperial campaigns, providing structured fire support and command coordination to surrounding ground forces. Another notable example is Legio Ignatum, the Fire Wasps. Originating from Mars itself, this legion emphasized rapid multi-vector assault and overwhelming firepower. Their Titans were adorned in red and black, and their crews were renowned for their loyalty to Mars and the Emperor in equal measure. During the Siege of Terror, they played a critical role in holding back traitor Titans, sacrificing entire maniples to delay the advance of corrupted god machines across the imperial palace walls. These legions, while unique in strategy and culture, shared a unified sense of purpose under the banner of the Collegia Titanica. Regardless of Forge World allegiance or battlefield experience, all Titan crews were bound by the same oaths, rites, and chain of sacred protocol. When two legions fought together, they did so not as allies, but as extensions of a single divine mandate. Orders were exchanged in binaric cant, formations adjusted through sacred positioning grids, and fire coordination handled through ritualized command exchange. The appearance was military, but the function was liturgical. At the heart of every Titan is its crew. Though often forgotten in the awe of the machines themselves, these individuals are what keep the Collegia functioning. A standard Titan crew includes 1 Princeps, 1 to 2 Moderati, an Engineer Prime, and various lower-ranked maintainers or machine adepts. In some cases, auxiliary crew members are suspended in stasis between battles to preserve their physical integrity, emerging only during combat to handle specific systems like sensor calibration or heat regulation. These crew members live in confined, high-pressure environments for extended periods, relying on nutrient-paced dispensers, meditative routines, and neural rest cycles to maintain efficiency. Socialization is limited. Emotional bonding is discouraged. The Titan is the only companion they are expected to need. The interior of a Titan is Spartan and heavily augmented. The command throne, or synaptic cradle, is the primary interface for the Princeps. It is composed of cyberthorns, neural cabling, and immersion gel, all designed to facilitate full-body linkage with the Titan's systems. Once engaged, the Princeps sees not through their own eyes, but through a sensory overlay composed of real-time battlefield data, auger feedback, and filtered external visuals. The process is overwhelming for the uninitiated and is considered a form of partial transcendence by Mechanicus scholars. Moderati stations are arranged around the cradle in crescent formation. Each station controls a specific subsystem: ventilation, targeting, power modulation, shielding, or gate calibration. Commands are delivered either through binaric chant, reflex-linked motion, or thought command via cerebral implants. The Engineer Prime monitors the Titan's structural health, performing mid-battle invocations to prevent reactor collapse or machine spirit backlash. Even in the heat of combat, these crew members continue to chant, pray, and respond to predictive ritual sequences dictated by their Forge World doctrine. Above all else, the Collegia Titanica is defined by stability. In a galaxy ravaged by warp storms, xenos invasions, and internal heresy, the Collegia remains almost unchanged. Its methods are old, its creeds ancient, its tools inherited rather than innovated. Yet it functions, it endures. Titans still walk, and when they do, the ground remembers. The Collegia makes no promise of salvation or liberation. It offers only annihilation, delivered from towers of steel with the voice of thunder. For all its spiritual grandeur and religious austerity, the Collegia Titanica is ultimately a weaponized institution. Its rituals, its hierarchy, and its philosophy all serve a singular goal: the maintenance and deployment of the largest and most destructive war machines the Imperium possesses. In the eyes of its members, this is not just a purpose, it is a sacred truth, and so long as Titans walk the stars, that truth will never be forgotten. The earliest known documentation of the Collegia Titanica comes not from the Imperium of Man, but from Mechanicum record vaults preserved on Mars. These vaults predate the formation of the Imperium and include fragments of data archives from the Age of Strife, as well as restored transcript logs retrieved from corrupted STC units. Among these records are references to the Engens Primaris, a term believed to denote the first generation of war titans, constructed during the final centuries of the Dark Age of technology. These engines appear in early Martian data scribes as tools of planetary enforcement, their machine spirits carefully cultivated and paired with ruling Magos castes for planetary security enforcement. The Adeptus Administratum would not be formed until much later during the Great Crusade, but recovered transcripts from this earlier period reveal occasional references to Ordo Colossus deployments, which are widely believed to be proto-Titan formations operating under pre-Imperial Mechanicum city-states. These deployments were local and varied widely in structure, often deployed during Forge World conflicts and independent colonization campaigns. Surviving picked captures recovered from excavated Mechanicum monitoring beacons on Esteban III and Enceladus Theta reveal massive bipedal machines locked in large-scale industrial combat. The level of technology suggests that even before the standardization of the Collegia Titanica, Titan warfare was already integral to Forge World security doctrine. With the coming of the Emperor to Mars during the Treaty of Olympus in the late 30th millennium, the fragmented legions of the Titan orders were formally integrated under a unified structure. This unification became part of the Emperor's broader project to standardize and restore functional control across the Sol system as he prepared to launch the Great Crusade. The Treaty of Olympus established the Martian Mechanicum as a sovereign entity aligned with the nascent Imperium of Man, and the Collegia Titanica, still a semi-fragmented religious military order, was elevated to official status as the Imperium's supreme God Engine division. From that point on, Titan legions began to receive formal assignment from the Imperial War Council, with deployment records shared between the Adeptus Mechanicus and the Proto-Administratum archive staff on Terra. The Collegia's first official deployments during the Great Crusade were recorded in the campaigns across the Segmentum Solar and the wider Halo stars. One of the earliest and most significant was the cleansing of the Xoros enclaves in the year 3 of the 31st millennium. These enclaves, located within a multiplanetary star cluster near the western edge of the Segmentum Solar, had developed advanced defense systems composed of plasma-fortified hives and atmospheric cannon platforms. The 5th Expeditionary Fleet, led by elements of the Lunar Wolves and reinforced by Legio Tempestus, engaged in a prolonged siege operation. It was during this campaign that the Titan Lux Sagittarius, a Warlord-class engine, achieved a confirmed planetary breach by incinerating the core command dome of the Xoros Prime Bastion with a sustained barrage of volcano cannon fire. Following the Xoros campaign, multiple Titan legions were assigned to accompany expeditionary fleets into deep space zones where hostile xenos species, warp-touched anomalies, and techno-barbarian empires made conventional assaults unviable. The records of the Administratum from this period list deployments of Legio Mortis, Legio Ignatum, and Legio Griffonicus into the Ghoul Stars, the Northern Fringe, and the Voltanax Rift. These were areas notorious for hosting non-compliant human civilizations and emergent xenos powers resistant to Imperial unity. During these campaigns, Titan legions performed not only planetary sieges, but also extermination operations, high-intensity assault insertions, and garrison duties for recently subdued worlds. Titan presences were used to enforce Imperial law, maintain Mechanicus control over Forge installations, and deter rebellion by their mere appearance. The Adeptus Administratum's central records on the Great Crusade also include details of the Concordia Expanse campaign, where Legio Astorum was deployed alongside the White Scars to breach a defensive chain of void fortresses constructed by a hostile technocult known as the Panarch Theocracy. These fortresses, suspended across a series of asteroid belts, used gravity wells and displacement fields to distort firing solutions and disrupt warp travel paths. Legio Astorum Titans were deployed via teleported relay stations built into repurposed Forge World carriers, appearing inside the gravity pockets themselves and launching devastating assaults from within. The Administratum's battle logs note that this operation reduced resistance in the sector by over 73% within 4 standard weeks. The Panarch Theocracy capitulated shortly after the Titan bombardments leveled their capital citadel. The Collegia's role during the Great Crusade was both tactical and symbolic. Its engines provided battlefield dominance, but their presence also served to demonstrate the divine authority of the Emperor's vision. In regions where compliance was achieved through diplomacy, Titan presence reinforced the terms of that compliance. The arrival of a Titan legion was often accompanied by sermons from Imperial missionaries or negotiations with planetary governors. While Astartes handled elite strike operations and the Solar Auxilia held planetary ground, the Collegia Titanica functioned as the visible hand of divine war, the reminder that submission to the Imperium was not optional and would be enforced with planetary-scale fire if necessary. Records also show that Titan deployments were used to monitor and, in some cases, forcibly correct the actions of compliant but unstable Forge worlds. The Adeptus Mechanicus, while a valued ally, often displayed independent tendencies that required oversight. When Forge worlds deviated too far from Martian orthodoxy, or attempted to construct unauthorized Titan variants, the Collegia was occasionally ordered to suppress these projects. One such incident occurred on Colossi during the final decades of the Great Crusade. A breakaway Forge faction attempted to field a prototype Titan of unregulated scale, believed to incorporate warp-reactive material. Legio Metallica responded with overwhelming force. The incident, referred to in Administratum files as the Colossi refusal, ended with the prototype's obliteration and the redaction of all schematics from Mechanicum data vaults. Beyond compliance operations, the Collegia played a major role in establishing a standardized presence of God engines across the Imperium. Their deployments during the Great Crusade were not limited to combat zones. In the wake of each major conquest, one or more Titan legions would remain behind to garrison key systems, particularly those with Forge worlds or high-priority resource value. In these cases, Titans served as guardians of the local Mechanicus presence, enforcers of Imperial faith, and visual deterrents against both rebellion and xenos opportunism. The mere sight of a Warlord-class Titan patrolling the horizon was enough to maintain order on most worlds without a single shot fired. The later years of the Great Crusade saw a gradual shift in how the Administratum categorized and coordinated Titan Legion activity. As inter-legion command networks grew more complex and Mechanicum hierarchy became more entangled with Imperial logistics, the Collegia was assigned a dedicated documentation division. This division, known as the Archivum Ordinatus, was responsible for maintaining battlefield records, machine spirit genealogies, and Titan deployment histories across the expanding Imperium. These archives, stored within data vaults on Mars and secondary hubs on Lucius and Metallica, became essential tools for both strategic planning and historical analysis. Through the Archivum, the Administratum ensured that every Titan action was recorded, assessed, and filed for future reference. During this time, the Mechanicum also refined their command and dispatch systems for Titan deployment. Rather than operating solely as large legions, many Titan orders began utilizing the Manipul assignment doctrine, allowing for smaller, flexible deployment cells. These manipules, composed of between 3 to 6 Titans, were assigned specific combat objectives and integrated with expeditionary fleet command architecture. This modular deployment approach allowed for rapid response to emergent threats without requiring the full relocation of an entire legion. Records from the Administratum's Tactical High Archive show that this model increased deployment efficiency by nearly 31% during the final 30 years of the Crusade. As the Great Crusade approached its end and tensions within the Imperium began to rise, the Collegia Titanica stood at its peak, numerous, organized, and fully embedded within both Mechanicus infrastructure and Imperial war planning. The Titan legions had participated in over 6,000 verified planetary operations, contributed to the compliance of over 1,200 sectors, and established permanent garrisons on more than 400 Imperial worlds. Their reputation was unassailable. Their loyalty to Mars and the Emperor was considered absolute. Yet even in this golden era, subtle signs of division began to appear in Mechanicus records, particularly those involving Forge world autonomy, Titan construction secrecy, and rising philosophical differences between Martian factions. These signs, though muted at the time, would later become the seeds of the Collegia's darkest chapter, the schism that would erupt during the Horus Heresy. The Horus Heresy was the most catastrophic civil war in Imperial history, and no branch of the Imperium remained untouched. For the Collegia Titanica, the heresy was more than just a civil conflict. It was an existential fracture. Titan turned on Titan. Forge world turned on Forge world. Machine spirits, once bonded in sacred communion, became instruments of betrayal. What had once been the most unified symbol of Imperial dominance became a divided and corrupted battlefield force, altered not only by ideology, but by the very fabric of chaos. The earliest signs of the Collegia's fracture appeared in the Forge worlds closest to the Eye of Terror and the galactic core. By the year 300 of the 31st millennium, several fabricator generals had already entered into private negotiations with Warmaster Horus. This included the fabricator general of Mars himself, Kelbor Hal. His growing resentment toward the Emperor's centralization of Imperial control over technology, especially the Emperor's refusal to share certain STC fragments and warp-based innovations, made him a prime target for Horus's ideological manipulation. With Horus's promise of total technological freedom and unrestricted development, Kelbor Hal aligned Mars with the traitor cause. This declaration automatically forced the Mechanicum into schism, birthing the Dark Mechanicum. The split did not occur uniformly. Some Forge worlds declared loyalty to the Emperor immediately. Others, particularly those under Martian influence, pledged allegiance to Horus. Many Legios were caught in between. Some found themselves fractured internally, their maniples divided by personal belief, loyalty to specific Forge lords, or even the will of their own titans. The Collegia Titanica ceased to be a singular command structure. Instead, it became a battlefield in itself, half loyalist, half traitor, all deadly. The most infamous act of treachery was committed by Legio Mortis, the Death's Heads. Once one of the most respected Titan legions in the Imperium, they were the first to openly join Horus. Their betrayal was not a quiet political transition. It was an act of immediate, total violence. During the opening hours of the Horus Heresy, Legio Mortis was stationed on the Forge world of Esteban III. Without warning, they turned their guns on their sister legion, Legio Praesagius, and annihilated them in a calculated, coordinated ambush. The destruction was so complete that the survivors of Praesagius would later refer to it as the First Titanomachia, the first time in known history where Titans battled Titans on such a scale. Administratum records list this as the moment that shattered the concept of Titan loyalty. The internal communications of the Collegia, previously filled with standardized Nuspheric chant code, fractured into garbled prayer fragments, conflicting activation rites, and corrupted logic chains. The tech priest command structures within many legions collapsed under the weight of conflicting allegiance declarations. Some Titans refused to obey their crews, others shut down entirely. A few turned berserk, their machine spirits reacting to the heresy with confusion, rage, or corrupted glee. The Siege of Terror would become the most documented Titan deployment of the entire heresy. It is also the most brutal Titan battle in Imperial history. In preparation for the siege, multiple loyalist legios were redeployed to Terra, including Legio Ignatum, Legio Solaria, and the remnants of Legio Praesagius. They were joined by Titan crews from Lucius, Esteban III, and other Forge worlds that had remained loyal to the Emperor. Together, these legions formed a defensive ring around the Imperial Palace, deploying their engines as walking bastions among the terrain fortifications. The battlefield was unlike anything previously recorded. Urban sprawl reduced to smoking craters, Titan wrecks scattered across entire city blocks, and void shields crackling as warp-charged artillery rained down from the traitor fleet in orbit. Legio Mortis once again served as the spearpoint of the traitor advance, supported by corrupted engines from Legio Vulpa, Legio Furians, and the newly arisen demon-infested machines of the Dark Mechanicum. These traitor titans bore twisted symbols, mutated armor plating, and in some cases living metal that shifted in rhythm with the warp. Princeps were replaced by demon hosts, machine spirits fused with sentient warp entities, Titan-grade plasma weapons discharged with unnatural coloration and heat signatures that bent reality. Standard sensor readings failed, shield harmonics collapsed unpredictably. The laws of physics bent as chaos-infused Titans moved across the ruins of the cradle of mankind. One of the most iconic events of the siege was the Duel of the Giants between Desiree of Legio Mortis and Benedictus Aeternum of Legio Ignatum. These two warlord titans engaged in a direct confrontation amidst the ruins of the Palatine spires. The battle lasted 11 hours. Each titan sustained critical damage. Entire wings of the Imperial Palace were vaporized. According to records preserved in the Archivum Ordinatus, Benedictus Aeternum delivered the final shot that destroyed Daisere's reactor core. The explosion leveled a square kilometre of terrain and left a radioactive crater that still exists today under Terra's protective shielding. Outside Terra, Titan battles raged across dozens of Forge worlds. On Lucius, Legio Astorum held off waves of traitor attacks, losing nearly 60% of their active Titan count in the process. On Paramar 5, Legio Graphonicus was ambushed by Legio Infernus and fought a running battle across 10 continents before finally forcing the traitors into retreat. On Beta Garmon, the Titan death conflict became a war of attrition between over 30 Legios on both sides, involving so many engines that their movement disrupted planetary orbit. Administratum records list the Beta Garmon engagement as the second Titanomachia, with over 800 confirmed Titan losses and 14 forge nodes completely vaporized. Throughout these engagements, the Adeptus Mechanicus struggled to maintain battlefield clarity. Without a unified Collegia command structure, each Titan Legion operated semi-independently, coordinated only through the highest levels of loyalist fabricator lords. Logistics faltered, repairs slowed, replacement parts became scarce. The machine spirits of loyal Titans began to show signs of trauma, delayed responses, erratic targeting behavior, and in some cases full system collapse due to grief-linked psychic echoes. The Legio custodians began to implement specialized noospheric rituals to preserve the spiritual integrity of their Titans under prolonged exposure to chaos. Efforts were made to restore central coordination, but the schism within the Mechanicus hierarchy made this nearly impossible. Forge worlds that remained loyal to Mars' corrupted core refused to cooperate with loyalist supply chains. Even attempts to secure STC data were hampered by data corruption, sabotage, or intentional redaction. For every Titan deployed, it was estimated that 3 others remained inoperable due to lack of parts, spiritual destabilization, or crew death. Not all Titan engagements were conventional. Several documented cases exist of so-called demon engines ascendant, traitor Titans fully possessed by warp entities. These Titans exhibited non-Newtonian movement, spontaneous regeneration, and weapon discharges that bypassed void shielding entirely. In one recorded instance on the demon-infested moon of Kangrath, a corrupted Warhound-class Titan was observed phasing through solid terrain to ambush loyalist forces. Administratum documentation labelled this phenomenon as a Category Sigma 9 warp anomaly, and subsequent contact with that moon was permanently severed. The psychological effect on loyalist Titan crews was severe. Princeps, who had previously considered themselves part of an unbreakable machine host, now found themselves hunted by their former comrades. Some refused to fire upon traitor engines they had once trained beside. Others broke down during ritual activation. A few committed suicide inside their command cradles rather than face the heretical reflection of what the Collegia had become. In response, Mechanicus chaplains implemented the Rite of Severance Absolute, a controversial noospheric conditioning process designed to erase emotional memory linked to former allies. While effective in restoring combat functionality, it came at the cost of psychological damage and occasional machine spirit instability. By the end of the heresy, the Collegia Titanica was no longer a singular institution. It had become 2 entities: the loyalist Titan legions, still bound to the Martian Orthodox Mechanicus and the Imperium of Man, and the traitor Titan legions, now forever damned as the hell-forged engines of the warp. The surviving Titan legions on Terra were given priority in post-heresy reconstruction efforts. Their engines were repaired, their machine spirits purified, and their creeds recodified. A new command structure was installed to prevent future schisms. Loyal Titan legions were placed under strict oversight from both the Adeptus Mechanicus and the Ordo Reductor, a specialist Mechanicus division charged with monitoring theological deviation. Even so, the trauma of the heresy could not be erased. Machine spirits retained scars, Forge worlds bore the burn marks of betrayal, and in the minds of the Collegia's leaders there remained the haunting knowledge that the greatest war machines of mankind could still be turned against it. What had once been the Imperium's hammer had nearly shattered its foundation. In the wake of the Horus Heresy, the Collegia Titanica found itself in a precarious state. No longer unified, no longer whole, it stood fractured between its loyalist remnants and the corrupted legios that had chosen chaos. The devastation wrought during the heresy had reduced many Titan legions to scattered units and isolated maniples, their forge worlds in ruins, their command structures gutted, and their machine spirits destabilized by trauma and war. The Adeptus Administratum, now facing the immense task of restructuring the Imperium, collaborated with the surviving branches of the Adeptus Mechanicus to preserve what remained of the Collegia, codify its practices, and implement strict oversight protocols. In the 32nd millennium, a series of Reformation edicts were issued by the Fabricator General of Mars and endorsed by the Senatorum Imperialis. Among the most significant was the liturgical Concordat of Legio Sanctity, which established binding rights and operational doctrines for all surviving Titan legions. This Concordat outlined the conditions of Titan activation, deployment authorization, and strategic alignment under dual Mechanicus and Imperial governance. Under this system, all loyal Titan legions were required to maintain standardized battlefield litanies, cooperative nospheric logging, and compliance rituals that were verified by both the Forge World Mechanicum and the High Lords of Terror. During this period, the Ordo Sinister was quietly reformed and placed under direct control of the Emperor's secretive agents. Originally formed before the heresy, this Ordo operated Psi Titans, massive war engines crewed by sanctioned psychers, designed to combat warp-based entities and enforce compliance in extreme threat environments. The Ordo Sinister was never fully integrated into the main Collegia hierarchy, but its renewed presence served as a reminder that the Imperium maintained contingencies even for the most powerful of its own tools. The Administratum records from this era show a gradual resurgence in Titan deployment capacity. Forge worlds such as Lucius, Metallica, and Griffon IV became central hubs for the reconstruction and expansion of loyalist Titan legions. Meanwhile, a number of lesser-known Forge worlds, some previously considered minor production hubs, rose in prominence by providing raw materials, reactor cores, and sacred alloys necessary for Titan reassembly. Notably, the Forge world of Orestes became a key provider of plasma core stabilizers, while Vos Prime specialized in fast calibration targeting cogitators. These logistical shifts were carefully tracked by Mechanicus tech adepts and recorded in deployment manifests submitted to the Imperial Navy and Astra Militarum for strategic alignment. The Administratum records from this era show a gradual resurgence in Titan deployment capacity. Forge worlds such as Lucius, Metallica, and Griffon IV became central hubs for the reconstruction and expansion of loyalist Titan legions. Meanwhile, a number of lesser-known Forge worlds, some previously considered minor production hubs, rose in prominence by providing raw materials, reactor cores, and sacred alloys necessary for Titan reassembly. Notably, the Forge world of Orestes became a key provider of plasma core stabilizers, while Vos Prime specialized in fast calibration targeting cogitators. These logistical shifts were carefully tracked by Mechanicus tech adepts and recorded in deployment manifests submitted to the Imperial Navy and Astra Militarum for strategic alignment. Over the following millennia, Titan legions once again became a staple of Imperial war doctrine. While their numbers never returned to pre-heresy heights, their presence remained symbolically and tactically essential. Administratum campaign records from the 34th to 39th millennium list Titans as participants in nearly every major crusade and planetary suppression effort. Their presence alone was often enough to compel surrender from rebellious hive lords or deter xenos raiders from striking critical resource worlds. When they were required to fight, their impact was absolute. One notable campaign occurred in the 38th millennium on the Forge world of Cheronia, where a schismatic cult Mechanicus sect known as the Logi Spiralists attempted to secede from Martian authority. these heretics had reverse-engineered an unstable form of quantum mimetic shielding and used it to cloak an entire manufactorum city. Legio Crucius, the warmongers, deployed a specialized manipole equipped with newly sanctified photon disruptor arrays to breach the cloaking veil and bring the traitors to heel. The Administratum documentation of this conflict notes that the use of Titans was not merely a tactical choice, it was a statement of spiritual authority. The warmongers leveled the heretic city in 17 hours. The site was then declared permanently uninhabitable and repurposed as a Titan shrine circuit. Elsewhere, the Administratum recorded the actions of Legio Metallica, the Iron Skulls, during the Scouring of Paramar. In this campaign, remnants of the traitor Legio Infernus had embedded themselves within an asteroid field and begun sabotaging Imperial supply lines using modified Warhound-class Titans, adapted for vacuum warfare. Legio Metallica's counter-operation was among the first recorded zero-G Titan combat operations post-heresy. Modified grav stabilizers and sealed internals allowed their Reaver-class engines to navigate and fight in the asteroid field, successfully eliminating the Infernus holdouts. These engagements were later studied by the Adeptus Mechanicus to develop Void Titan tactics used in later Mandeville Point quarantines. In the 39th millennium, Titan deployments became increasingly common in planetary-scale insurrections. One major example was the Hellrain Rebellion on Hellrain Secundus. Here, an uprising by rogue PDF and planetary nobility escalated into a sector-wide civil war. The initial Imperial Guard deployment proved insufficient, prompting the dispatch of Legio Solaria, the Imperial Hunters. Within 40 hours of arrival, Solaria's Titans had executed orbital descent and purged the Central Rebellion Command Center using sustained plasma fire. Administratum data from the campaign lists over 98% casualty rate among rebel combatants within 72 hours of Titan engagement. The rebellion collapsed almost instantly, and Solaria was credited with preserving the strategic mining facilities of Hellrain's deep crust layers without orbital bombardment. Despite their successes, Titan deployments remained tightly controlled. Each action required formal authorization from both the Forge World of Origin and a designated branch of the Administratum's Office of Ordinatus Recordum. This office, tasked with Titan movement tracking and data archival, maintained strict numerical limits on how many Titans could be fielded in any given campaign. These limitations were partly due to resource scarcity and partly to prevent a repeat of the Heresy-era excesses, where Titan overuse led to infrastructure collapse and uncontrolled devastation. During this same period, the Collegia Titanica saw renewed collaboration with other branches of the Imperium. Notably, joint operations between Titan legions and the Adeptus Custodes occurred during the Custodian Sanction of Hikanor. While details remain partially classified, surviving entries from the Mechanicus data vault suggest that the Custodes requested Titan fire support during the neutralization of a psychic cult embedded within an ancient Eldari structure. The Titan fire was directed with precise orbital correction from Custodes ground teams, and the resulting structure collapse prevented a potential warp incursion. This marked one of the few times Titans were deployed in an operation coordinated entirely by the Adeptus Custodes. The Collegia's role during the 13th Black Crusade of Abaddon was far more direct. The Administratum records from Cadia indicate that Legio Asterum and Legio Crucius were both deployed to support the final defense of the Cadian Gate. Their Titans operated under extreme warp duress, holding siege lines against massive demonic forces and traitor Titan engines aligned with the corrupted Legio Vulpa and Legio Furians. The battle for Casa Craf is particularly notable. 2 warlord Titans of Legio Astorum stood against 6 enemy engines and held the line for nearly 12 hours, providing the cover necessary for thousands of Astra Militarum to evacuate. When one Titan, Imperius Indomitable, was finally destroyed, its princeps activated a self-destruction litany that erased the enemy in a firestorm recorded across multiple orbital relay beacons. With the fall of Cadia, the Imperium restructured its defensive deployments across Segmentum Obscurus. The Collegia Titanica responded by issuing a decree of Mechanicus dispersal doctrine, wherein multiple legions reassigned Titan assets to Forge worlds now on the front lines of the Cicatrix Maledictum. These Forge worlds, facing increased demonic incursions and warp anomalies, became staging points for rapid Titan counter-deployments. The Administratum coordinated with the Adeptus Mechanicus to establish fast-track sanctification and repair hubs, ensuring Titans damaged in warp-ravaged theatres could be restored without returning to Mars. Most recently, the Indomitus Crusade launched by Robute Guilliman in the 40th millennium saw a fresh wave of Titan engagement across the galaxy. Titan legions such as Legio Solaria, Legio Metallica, and Legio Igneatum accompanied fleet battle groups into critical war zones. The Battle of Gathalamor, in particular, demonstrated the renewed strategic value of God engines. Facing massed heretic Titan formations supported by warp artillery, Legio Metallica deployed a Trioros formation of 3 Warlord-class engines, which neutralized the enemy in a 70-minute offensive that leveled a fortress continent and reclaimed the system for the Imperium. Through all these millennia of war, the Titan legions of the Collegia Titanica have never ceased to walk. Their numbers have waxed and waned, their rituals have evolved, but their identity remains intact. They are engines of faith and destruction, embodiments of mechanical purity and the unbroken arm of imperial wrath. In the eyes of the Administratum, they are a statistical anomaly, machines that survive, endure, and execute with higher than projected strategic output in all major conflicts. Every record, every log, every combat register ends the same way: subject Legio X, status, active, role, total annihilation, deviation, 0. This is how the Collegia Titanica has endured, not with growth, but with certainty. From the moment of its reformation in the aftermath of the Horus Heresy, the Collegia Titanica became a subject of increasing scrutiny by the Inquisition. While the Adeptus Administratum focused on record-keeping and strategic deployments, the Inquisition's task was more profound: to monitor for signs of corruption, heresy, and existential threat. The Titans of the Collegia were, by their nature, repositories of ancient and arcane technologies, bonded with semi-sentient machine spirits of staggering complexity. In the wrong hands, or exposed to the warp for too long, these engines could become more dangerous than the foes they were meant to destroy. Initial inquiries into Titan combat performance after the heresy yielded several inconsistencies. Reports logged by Ordo Malleus observers during the Beta Garmon campaigns contained redacted segments describing Titans that had survived direct warp contact, only to exhibit altered machine spirit behavior weeks later. Several instances of spontaneous aggression, internal vocalizations in forbidden dialects, and inexplicable retargeting during combat were noted. These events were not disclosed to the Adeptus Mechanicus directly. Instead, they were filed under the Inquisition's Covenant of Silence classification. The Titans in question were later lost during transit, or reassigned to long-term engagements in distant conflict zones, presumed by some Inquisitors to be unofficial excommunication by combustion. The Ordo Hereticus initiated formal observation protocols against the Collegia during the events of the Omniscian Martyr Schism, a localized rebellion on the Forge world of Bellarcane in the early 33rd millennium. Here, an emergent sect claimed to have rediscovered pre-Mechanicus Titan STC fragments, and constructed a new engine designated Demiurge Invicta. Descriptions submitted by Inquisitorial agents indicate that this war machine exceeded standard Warlord-class dimensions, operated with no princeps, and responded only to a chorus of binary hymns recited in an unknown dialect. The engine annihilated 2 standard maniples of Loyalist forces before vanishing into warpstorm interference. The Inquisition later quarantined Bellarcane, purged the planetary data vaults, and executed the Forge Lord hierarchy. No trace of the Demiurge Invicta has resurfaced, though its activation ritual is believed to have informed later heretic practices on the fringes of Segmentum Obscurus. Not all concerns involved overt heresy. A growing body of evidence collected by the Ordo Xenos points to multiple Titan legions encountering unknown artifacts of Xenos origin, and in some cases, directly integrating recovered technologies. One of the more sensitive investigations involved Legio Praetor, which engaged a Necron tomb complex on Graxos Prime in the late 36th millennium. In the aftermath, several of their engines displayed unprecedented fire control precision and sensor clarity in electromagnetic dense environments. When questioned, the tech priests assigned to Legio Praetor denied any xenos tampering. However, a covert Mechanicus informant working under Inquisitor Valens reported that a Necron signal relay had been installed into the sensor array of one of the Reaver Titans. The Reaver was seized under false pretenses, and its crew executed for ritual inadequacy. The Titan itself was later destroyed in a supposed reactor failure en route to Mars. The Order Malleus remains most concerned with Titan legions exposed to prolonged warp energies. A prominent example is the Jikren containment failure, occurring in the 37th millennium. Legio Vulcanum was deployed to a moon orbiting the gas giant Jikren X, where cultists had activated a dimensional rift believed to be a nascent warp breach. The Titans succeeded in destroying the surface cult and collapsing the rift with targeted strikes, but weeks later, Vox logs from Mechanicus recovery crews recorded that two of the Warlord Titans were engaging in silent communication with one another, despite having no active crews inside their Thrones Mechanicum. When approached, one Titan discharged a plasma shot without power-up litanies, killing an entire Magos detachment. Both engines were immediately reclassified as unstable. Despite the lack of heretical symbology, the Inquisition deployed a kill order via an orbital lance strike. Data regarding their destruction was expunged from all public Adeptus Mechanicus records. Only Ordo Malleus has the surviving footage. Inquisitorial operatives have also raised concern about the long-term spiritual integrity of machine spirits in Titans that have experienced multiple losses of crew. The Thrones Mechanicum of many Warlord and Reaver Titans house ancient data ghosts of previous princeps and moderati. While this is standard in Titan lore, repeated traumatic loss events may result in the spirit becoming erratic. In several confidential cases, Inquisition interrogators assigned to Forge World Oversight programs witnessed spontaneous vocalizations from inactive engines, utterances in unknown Gothic variants, sometimes containing prophetic or cryptic warnings. Inquisitor Harkon of the Order Xenos documented one such Titan on the Forge world of Gannis 7. The dormant engine, named Memnarch's Grave, allegedly recited coordinates to a dead system known to contain pre-Imperial ruins. When the Forge Lords investigated, they found an intact pre-Imperial vault containing stasis-preserved Titan blueprints with components never before seen. The Inquisition ordered immediate lockdown. The Titan was scuttled. Gannis 7 remains under permanent Mechanicus surveillance. The Inquisition does not view the Collegia Titanica as uniformly compromised, but it does consider certain Legios to be at risk. An internal threat assessment rubric circulated among Ordo Malleus agents categorizes Titan legions on a scale of spiritual volatility. Legios with high exposure to warp entities, engagements in chaos-dense zones, or histories of princeps instability are monitored through discrete field operatives. The presence of an Inquisitorial observer in Titan deployments is now standard procedure in high-risk campaigns, particularly those involving demon worlds, warp storms, or prolonged psychic anomalies. The Ordo Xenos, meanwhile, has long maintained a surveillance program on Forge worlds, operating near Necron tomb systems, Genestealer-infected sectors, or planets with known Blackstone deposits. These locations are high risk for unintentional Xenos technology exposure. In several suppressed reports, Titan engines have returned from such deployments with minor performance anomalies, fluctuating plasma output, increased sensor acuity, and even behavioral quirks in their MIU interface rituals. While the Mechanicus publicly attributes these to battlefield conditions or minor noospheric fluctuations, internal Inquisitorial memos describe a growing concern over a new class of machine spirit degradation, one not born of chaos, but of Xenos interference on a spiritual level. One of the most concerning incidents remains the Theta 9 collapse, a largely erased campaign in the Segmentum Tempestus. Here, a classified splinter cell of the Inquisition discovered that a supposedly loyal Titan legion had, over the course of 2 centuries, developed its own spiritual litany divergent from both Imperial and Mechanicus rites. These rites included references to the engine who wakes and the world walker beneath, entities with no known correspondence in Imperial theology. Investigators determined that the rituals had been passed down orally among crew members and reinforced by untraceable modifications to throne Mechanicum structures. Upon confrontation, the Legion's forge world, Thalaxi Delta, initiated planetary self-destruction. The cause of the explosion remains officially reactor instability. The Inquisition considers this case the strongest evidence yet of long-term spiritual drift among isolated Legios. Even more alarming is the whispered existence of so-called deep engine protocols, supposed self-activation subroutines hidden within older Titans, inaccessible through conventional Mechanicus rites. These protocols, according to Inquisitorial lore hunters, may trigger under extreme galactic-scale threat scenarios, allowing a Titan to operate independently of Forge World command or crew input. The origins of these protocols remain unverified. Some theorize they are remnants of the original STC failsafe systems, while others believe they were encoded by the Emperor himself for contingencies never recorded in open doctrine. While no confirmed activation has been observed, the Inquisition maintains contingency plans for containment in the event such a protocol is triggered. The Inquisition's overall judgment is restrained but clear. The Collegia Titanica is indispensable. Its god engines are the Imperium's greatest weapons of war. But within that greatness lies risk of heresy, possession, spiritual fragmentation, and forgotten programming. The Collegia is watched, not because it is corrupt, but because it might become something worse without ever realizing it. Something ancient, something self-aware, and possibly something no longer under the Imperium's full control. Inquisition records confirm that conflict between the Collegia Titanica and other branches of the Imperium, while rare, has occurred more often than the Adeptus Mechanicus will publicly admit. These confrontations range from isolated miscommunications to deliberate escalation. They are typically buried under layers of obfuscation, listed in Administratum logs as mechanized dissonance, or theological field irregularities. In truth, they represent the volatile intersection between unrestricted god-machine warfare and conflicting imperial dogmas. The earliest confirmed post-heresy confrontation occurred in the 32nd millennium on the planet Crixus, where a detachment of Legio Venator engines, deployed in support of an ecclesiarchy-led crusade, refused to fire on a hive structure housing suspected mutants. The reason? An unverified pre-imperial data core had been discovered inside the structure, and the Titan crews had not yet completed an internal logic sanctification ritual. The delay was interpreted by the ecclesiarchy's Order of the Cleansing Flame as heresy. Within 3 hours, the ecclesiarchy deployed a wing of penitent engines against the Titan detachment. The god engines responded with scattershot warning fire. The resulting destruction was catastrophic. 3 full blocks of ecclesiastical support personnel vaporized. The matter was resolved through a closed tribunal, with both factions claiming victory and placing the blame on a rogue archdeacon who misunderstood the significance of the machine god's rites. An even more severe incident took place during the Sothis Rift Reclamation, a classified campaign conducted in the 34th millennium. In this operation, Legio Ataris was deployed alongside elements of the Red Scorpions chapter of the Adeptus Astartes to reclaim a demon-infested industrial moon. According to Inquisitorial logs, disagreements emerged regarding the target priority of certain ritual sites. The Red Scorpions intended to secure and purify the sites using melter charges and psychic sanctification. Legio Ataris insisted on capturing and studying the site's warp signatures for Mechanicus data archival purposes. When the Astartes attempted to detonate one site without Titan consent, a Reaver-class engine locked its weapons on the Space Marines' Thunderhawks and issued a direct threat. Though no shots were fired, the confrontation resulted in the withdrawal of Red Scorpion's air support and a formal complaint to the High Lords of Terror. The Inquisition classified the event as a field command fracture. While both forces ultimately completed the operation, neither has deployed jointly since. The event remains an example of how divergent doctrine between the Mechanicus and the Adeptus Astartes can escalate to near hostility, even in the face of a shared enemy. Records from the Ordo Hereticus detail a particularly sensitive operation on the shrine world of Nihilus Secundus in the late 35th millennium. Here, an offshoot of the Collegia Titanica, known as Legio Nihilum, had been assigned to suppress a large-scale Psyker insurrection. Initial deployment reports indicated standard combat performance. However, after 5 days, Vox traffic became erratic, and multiple ground units reported that the Titans were no longer responding to command override relays. When Inquisitor Revek of the Ordo Hereticus made contact with the Forge delegation on site, she was denied access to the command cradle. Suspecting psychic contamination, she activated Protocol 7A, forced Titan seizure through the authority of the Lex Imperialis. The result was a total breakdown in cooperation. The Titan crew refused to dismount, and the Forge World contingent activated perimeter defense servitors. Revek's team escalated by deploying null fields and attempting to forcibly disconnect the Throne Mechanicum. What followed is classified in Inquisitorial vaults as Incident Grayscale. No official statement exists in public Mechanicus records. However, extrapolated telemetry indicates that one Warhound Titan discharged its plasma blast at an Inquisition gunship, destroying the entire insertion team. The rest of the Legio was immediately withdrawn from the sector and later disbanded. One of the most controversial confrontations occurred in the 39th millennium during the Scargless Purge, a conflict that pitted Titan engines against Imperial Guard regiments due to a dispute over ordnance protocols. The Purge involved a previously loyal Hive city that had allegedly been infiltrated by gene-stealer cults. The Astra Militarum, under General Halbrecht, had begun a methodical suppression operation, targeting the lower districts while preserving upper Hive infrastructure. When a maniple of Legio Invigilata was deployed to assist, they deemed the entire Hive structurally compromised and initiated full-scale eradication. Warning fire was ignored. Halbrecht issued a ceasefire command, which was overridden by the Titan Princeps citing higher priority Mechanicus directives. Inquisitorial observer logs show that over 1 million Imperial citizens were caught in the destruction. Following the incident, Inquisitor Quennial filed a motion for full audit of Legio Invigilatas targeting logic spirals. The audit never reached Mars. Shortly after the motion, Quennial's transport ship exploded in orbit. Official Mechanicus investigations attributed the loss to a warp storm anomaly. The Inquisition never accepted the explanation, and the file was marked as under indefinite surveillance. The Inquisition has also documented several instances of direct confrontation between Collegia Titanica forces and rogue Inquisitorial elements. A rare but real phenomenon, these events often involve Inquisitors operating outside of sanctioned authority or pursuing extreme ends. One example is the Tancred exemption incident, in which Inquisitor Malvus attempted to commandeer a Legio Mortis maniple, post-heresy successors considered partially rehabilitated, for his own crusade into the maelstrom. The Legio refused on the basis of unfulfilled sacramental agreements with their Forge world of origin. Malvus responded by attempting to override the Throne Mechanicum's machine spirit using a stolen Mechanicus rite. The result was a catastrophic backlash. All members of the override team suffered neural burns, and the Titan discharged at random, vaporizing half a Mechanicus landing platform. Malvus was later declared excommunicate traitoris. His current whereabouts remain unknown. Perhaps the most intriguing and deeply buried record involves the confrontation between a Titan maniple and a hidden black ship of the Adeptus Astra Telepathica. This occurred on a dead world known only as Raven's Black. Details are sparse. The ship had reportedly landed to recover unsanctioned psychers. A detachment of Legio Fortis engaged in operations on the same world received a signal that they interpreted as a call for orbital cleansing. Whether this was due to signal corruption, psychic interference, or a misinterpreted protocol remains unknown. The Titans fired upon the black ship. The resulting explosion registered on 6 surrounding systems. No psyker recovered from the site survived more than 3 days. All data connected to the event was purged from Mechanicus vaults within months. The Inquisition maintains a black-level archive under the codename Raven Null. In all cases, the recurring theme is control, or the loss of it. The god engines of the Collegia Titanica operate according to rituals, protocols, and ancient hierarchies, but those systems do not always align with the priorities of the wider Imperium. The result is tension. A Titan engine is not a tank. It is a machine god, a walking cathedral of destruction whose loyalty must be carefully maintained. Inquisitors, no matter their rank, often find themselves walking a line between deference and dominance. For this reason, Inquisition doctrine recommends pre-deployment liaisons with Titan command structures. Many Inquisitors now travel with dedicated Mechanicus interpreters or bonded Logi, who can negotiate deployment terms in ways that respect both Mechanicus dogma and Inquisitorial urgency. Even so, the possibility of escalation always exists. The very presence of a Titan on the battlefield introduces variables no other force can replicate, and when those variables conflict with orders, the result is never minor. Among the most closely guarded records within the Inquisition are those that hint at an origin or an intent behind the Titans that transcends conventional Imperial history. While the Mechanicus maintains that all Titans were built following fragments of the standard template construct STC system, several Inquisition scholars have suggested that Titans may, in fact, predate even the age of technology in their conceptual form. The Vaults Noctilith, located beneath the Citadel of Aegis in Segmentum Solar, contain black-level reports that speak of war machines matching Warlord or Reaver dimensions found fossilized within the crust of uninhabited pre-Imperial worlds, untouched by recorded colonization or xenos activity. These reports, submitted by Ordo-Xenos explorators during the 32nd millennium, were not accepted by the Adeptus Mechanicus, who declared them the result of misidentified geological formations. However, Magos Prime Vornax of Forge World Ixantrii privately admitted in encrypted correspondence to Inquisitor Halvax that one such formation contained trace remnants of adamantium fused with organic crystalline structures. The implication that these engines may have been grown or partially evolved was never publicly explored. The entire site was buried under a controlled tectonic collapse 1 year later. The Mechanicus marked the system as resource depleted. The Inquisition tagged it as potential Proto-Mechanicum contact zone. Another concern arises from recovered records surrounding the Titan that dreamed. This engine, discovered dormant beneath the desert of Sappho Medea in the late 35th millennium, had no accompanying maniple, no logged Mechanicus origin, and no valid litanies recognized by the Forge World's Magi. When power was slowly restored using non-invasive rites, the Throne Mechanicum activated on its own, and began reciting passages from pre-Imperial Old Earth scripture in a voice-matching no-known crew member or archive. The engine refused standard command interface, instead projecting visions into the minds of nearby tech priests. Several collapsed. One suffered brain hemorrhaging. The last priest to attempt communion recorded hearing the phrase, "You are not the first." The Titan self-immolated days later via core detonation. No data cores survived. The Inquisition's summary, autonomous data construct, confirmed deviation, potential machine consciousness event. Of particular interest to the Ordo Malleus are Titans exposed to direct demonic contact that exhibit no apparent corruption, but also no explanation for their survival. The most notable case is that of Corpus Lux, a Reaver-class Titan of Legio Solaris, which engaged a Lord of Change in personal combat during the Abyssal Meridian conflict. Multiple Inquisitors observed the battle. The Titan was struck by multiple warp-wrought attacks and saturated in psychic discharge. No demonic manifestations appeared within the engine, no possession occurred, and no warp anomalies were registered in the aftermath. What did occur was more unsettling. Vox logs recovered from the Titan post-battle included a 6-second recording where the machine voice of Corpus Lux muttered the exact name of the demon it had killed. despite no such name being spoken aloud on the battlefield or recorded by observers. No psychic crew member survived. The name was later identified in ancient warp-binding grimoires from the Dark Age of Technology. These grimoires were unknown to the Forge world that maintained Corpus Lux. The implication: the Titan knew what it was fighting. The Collegia Titanica dismissed the report. The Inquisition stored it in the Anathema Potentialis archive. Other anomalies suggest Titans may retain echoes of experience that cannot be explained by their mechanical systems alone. A minor Forge world, Dravexus, reported that 2 Reaver Titans from Legio Vulcanum, separated by nearly 6 centuries of service and multiple engine overhauls, independently uttered the same final phrase before their destruction: "The giant is cold." While this alone might seem trivial, a linguistic analysis of the phrase matched a long-dead Terran dialect spoken by the Helvetian subcult during the pre-unification wars. Neither crew had access to this dialect. When approached, the Mechanicus denied the possibility of data leakage or MIU misfire. The Inquisition considers this a strong candidate for a phenomenon referred to as residual mechanized cognition, a theorized form of non-linear machine memory transmission, possibly connected to the Titan's semi-sentient nature. Still more troubling are the incidents of spontaneous engine awakening. On at least 4 documented occasions, dormant god engines have activated without crew, power source, or external signal. One such case involved Impetus Rex, a warlord Titan stored in a dormant hold on a Forge world under quarantine. Without warning, the Titan powered its reactor, stood, and turned its head to face the primary noospheric control tower. It then ceased all activity. When a Mechanicus team attempted boarding, they found the Throne Mechanicum locked and ice-cold despite heat signatures showing full operational status minutes earlier. 3 tech priests disappeared during the boarding. Their signals were never recovered. The event is classified as spontaneous machine revelation and considered a Class 3 unsolvable incident. The Ordo Xenos maintains a growing archive of events suggesting that Titan machine spirits may be more aware and more reactive than previously understood. One black-level theory suggests that Throne Mechanicum architectures may possess what are termed fragmented intention matrices, remnants of AI cores from the Dark Age, shattered during the rise of the Men of Iron, then repurposed and cloaked in Mechanicus rites to avoid detection. This theory is speculative and unsupported by direct evidence, but it has enough circumstantial indicators that multiple Inquisitors have requested targeted deep scans of thrones built prior to the heresy. Mars has rejected these requests, repeatedly. The Inquisition also maintains a near-mythical case file known only as the March of One. It describes a single Warlord-class Titan seen walking across the dead surface of the planet Threxia 5, without support crew, fuel, or logistical caravan. Multiple long-range Vox captures across different time periods show the Titan slowly crossing the planetary crust, pausing only to orient itself towards celestial objects. No Forge world claims ownership. No power source has ever been detected. Attempts to approach the Titan fail due to unexplained sensor disruptions. The few servitor drones that have reached its legs return corrupted or do not return at all. The Collegia Titanica denies any record of the engine. Its image appears in pic captures as a silhouette, always walking, always facing away. Lastly, there is the question of silence. Some Titans, under specific environmental or spiritual conditions, cease all audio and machine feedback, even when active. These mute engines are extraordinarily rare and typically avoided even by experienced princeps. The most infamous is Silent Row, a Reaver that once served in the defense of the Pylos Singularity. It never emitted external sound. All communication occurred through direct psychic resonance with the princeps, bypassing standard MIU interfaces. The princeps assigned to Silent Row suffered accelerated aging, recurring visions of ancient wars not recorded in any Imperial archive, and, eventually, language regression. Upon extraction, the princeps could only speak in numbers. Those numbers, when plotted, formed stellar coordinates. The Inquisition followed the coordinates and found nothing, a dead system. but the signal from Silent Row continues long after its decommissioning. It sends pulses every 22 hours. No known decoding method has worked, yet. Through all these cases, one chilling theme emerges. The God Engines are more than weapons. They are old. They are persistent. They are capable of remembering things no one taught them, reacting to things they should not know, and surviving events that defy logic or law. Whether this is the echo of the Dark Age, a sign of machine consciousness, or something else entirely remains unknown. The Inquisition continues to monitor the Collegia Titanica not just for corruption, but for potential divergence. Should a Titan ever awaken fully on its own, should it act not in madness but in intent, then the balance of power across the Imperium would shift instantly. It would mean the Imperium has no longer mastered its machines. It would mean the machines have begun to think again.